A pall of dread, thick as nebular dust, had settled over the great hall of the Galactic conclave. Beneath its vaulted crystalline ceiling, where light from 1,000 stars was refracted into a perpetual peaceful dawn, sat the assembled delegates of 47 sovereign species. The air, usually humming with the gentle discourse of millennia-old diplomacy, was now electric with a jarring, unfamiliar frequency. Panic. At the central podium, Ambassador Kale of the Altari Federation stood as a monument to shattered composure. His usually vibrant azure skin was pallid. His delicate, four-fingered hands trembled against the lectern, and his large, luminous eyes, known for their gentle curiosity, held the haunted glaze of a witness to prophecy. He was a man who had stared into the abyss of a coming storm, and the abyss had improbably smiled back. If you are drawn to tales where the hunter becomes the hunted, where ancient power meets incomprehensible resolve, then journey with us. Like, subscribe, and share to ensure you never miss a story where the galaxy itself holds its breath. Now, let us descend into the silence before the thunderclap. Honored delegates, custodians of peace, Kale began, his voice a strained melody amplified by the universal translators. I stand before you not with news of discovery, but with a dispatch from the precipice. Our long-range scout vessels, charting the silent margins of the galactic rim, have made contact. A new sentient species. They call their world Earth. They call themselves humanity. A ripple of keen interest, colored by the distinct hues of 47 different cultures, washed through the assembly. New life was the conclave's highest sacrament, a reason for celebration, for gentle introduction to the galactic tapestry. The Zxwhale trilled their fluted excitement. The crystalline gen pulsed with soft, approving light. Then, a shadow fell across the hopeful murmur. From the delegation of scarred obsidian and crimson banners, General Vex of the Draxan Imperium rose. He uncoiled to his full, terrifying height, a being of corded muscle and gleaming red scales, a predator sculpted by eons of conquest. His voice was the sound of continental plates grinding, dripping with condescension. A new species means unclaimed resources, fresh biomass for the forges, virgin worlds to etch with the sigil of the Imperium. This is not a crisis, Altari. This is a gift. Kale flinched but held his ground. You misunderstand, General. This is no gift. It is a loaded weapon pointed at the heart of everything we know. These humans are different. They are dangerous in a paradigm we lack the language to describe. Derisive laughter, harsh and guttural, erupted from the Draxan cohort. Vex's lipless mouth split into a grin of needle-sharp teeth. Dangerous? Ambassador, your species' defining trait is a pathological aversion to risk. You classify a slight drizzle as a meteorological hazard. What possible threat could a single, isolated species, barely off their cradle rock, pose to the Draxan Imperium, whose legions have crushed civilizations underfoot for 1,000 generations? Kale did not argue. Instead, with a trembling finger, he activated the holoprojector. A gem-like world, blue and white swirled, spun above the podium. Achingly beautiful, deceptively serene. Images flickered. Sprawling cities of impossible verticality, veins of light tracing continents, the clumsy, beautiful blossoms of chemical rockets pushing tin cans into the void. By all standard metrics, Kale narrated, his voice hollow, they are a young race, pre-FTL. Early planetary consolidation. We initiated First Contact Protocol Gamma, peaceful observation, cultural exchange. They welcomed us. Their curiosity was insatiable, their hospitality genuine. We shared fundamentals of astrophysics, medicine. They shared their history. The hologram shifted. Gone were the cityscapes. Now the conclave watched silent, grainy footage of ant-like human forms clashing on misty plains, swords flashing. Then, the scenes evolved. Trenches like open wounds in the earth, machines of steel belching fire, skies darkened with winged death. The images accelerated blitzkriegs, firestorms over cities, and finally, the awful sun-born mushrooms blooming over deserts and oceans, a terrifying testament to a species that had learned to split the atom not for power, but for annihilation. For over 5,000 of their years, Kale's voice dropped to a horrified whisper, they have known war, not as a fleeting horror, not as an evolutionary phase to be outgrown, but as a constant, a companion. They have woven conflict into the very fabric of their culture, their art, their science. They have fought with rocks, with bronze, with steel, with gunpowder, with fission, and with ideas. They have turned poetry into propaganda and symphony into psychological assault. They possess not a history punctuated by war, but a history of war. The hall had fallen utterly silent. The Gen's light had dimmed to a worried flicker. General Vex scoffed, but it was a weaker sound now. Savagery is not strategy. Brute force shatters against disciplined legions and orbital supremacy. What are their weapons? Crude kinetics? Chemical explosives? It is not the weapons, Kale insisted, his voice gaining a desperate strength. It is the mind. The human mind is a weapon we cannot comprehend. The display changed again, showing stark institutions, West Point, Sandhurst, The Art of War by Sun Tzu. They have universities dedicated solely to the study of conflict. They dissect battles fought millennia ago as if they were yesterday. They run simulations of wars that have not yet happened, exploring every contingency, every failure. For them, warfare is not a means to an end. It is a dark, sacred science, a mathematical equation where the variables are morale, terrain, logistics, and fear, and the solution is always the efficient application of overwhelming force. He let that sink in, the horror of a species that treated destruction with academic rigor. And the most terrifying part, Kale whispered, locking eyes with General Vex, is their capacity for restraint. They built weapons that could unmake their world 100 times over. And then they stopped. They created a balance of terror so precise, so unstable, that it has held for generations. They are not maddened beasts. They are cold, rational, infinitely patient tacticians who understand the true cost of war better than any being in this hall because they have paid it in blood again and again. Kale leaned forward, his final words dropping into the silence like stones into a still pond. Before we departed, I sat with their senior military advisor, a man with eyes older than his years. I asked him, purely hypothetically, what Earth's response would be to an unprovoked attack from a superior force. He paused, the memory visibly chilling him. He told me they would not defend, not in the way we understand. They would not meet our fleets in glorious battle. They would disassemble us. They would study our tactics for a week, our technology for a month. They would identify every single point of failure in our society, logistical, cultural, psychological. And then, with surgical, relentless precision, they would apply pressure until our entire civilization fractured from within. They would turn our own strengths into vulnerabilities, our pride into a trap. They would make the very idea of attacking them seem like a species-wide suicide note. Kale took a shuddering breath. And then General Vex, the man smiled. It was not a smile of cruelty. It was the smile of a master craftsman discussing his trade. The galaxy has just discovered a species that has spent 5,000 years perfecting the art of killing, and has now, miraculously, chosen peace. I beg you, do not give them a reason to change their mind. The warning hung in the air, a specter at the feast. The Draxan delegation was no longer laughing. General Vex's yellow eyes had narrowed to calculating slits. The ambassador's fear was not the fear of the weak for the strong. It was the fear of a physicist who has just watched someone casually breach the laws of thermodynamics. It was the fear of the unknown, weaponized and made sentient. 3 solar cycles later, deep within the geothermal heart of the Draxan homeworld, in a war chamber carved from black basalt and lit by the hellish glow of magma veins, Emperor Thrax held court. The reports from the conclave were scattered before him like bones. The altary squeal of monsters in the dark. Thrax rumbled, his voice the bass note of an earthquake. His immense form, a mountain of scarred crimson scales and ancient muscle, shifted, casting a gargantuan shadow. They shiver at their own whispers. This human menace is a phantom they have conjured to excuse their own weakness. Admiral Rex, a younger, fiercely ambitious Draxan whose scales shone with polished aggression, stood at the strategic holotank. The intelligence scans align with altary timidity, my emperor. The Sol system is technologically adolescent. Chemical propulsion, fragmented planetary governance. Their largest orbital asset is a research station of laughable scale. Their military vessels are converted freighters and mining rigs. Pathetic. He threw images onto the tank. Blocky human freighters, clumsy-looking orbital platforms. Their primary defensive theory appears to be a primitive, mutually assured destruction doctrine. A child's game of holding a knife to its own throat to deter others. Against our plasma lances and gravitic shields, it is a theory that will be terminally disproven. General Vex, present but uncharacteristically subdued, interjected. The Altari ambassador was convincingly terrified, not of weapons but of intellect. He spoke of their history as a millennia-long training montage. History, Thrax boomed, the chamber vibrating. The past is a cemetery. We live in the present, and the present says their fleet is a flock of sheep, and our armada is a pack of wolves. Rex, conquest pattern. How long? Admiral Rex's eyes gleamed. With the 4th battle fleet, 300 capital ships, the system would be pacified in 10 solar days. Orbital dominance in 3. Their planets are soft, vulnerable. Their resources are plentiful. The asteroid belt alone contains enough rare minerals to fuel our war machine for a standard cycle. Thrax rose, a tectonic event. Then the matter is settled. The conclave dithers. The prey is isolated and unaware. The Imperium does not ask permission to feast. Admiral Rex, you will take the 4th battle fleet. General Vex, you will prepare the ground legions and the re-education cadres. This Earth will be a new jewel in the Imperial crown. Let the humans' final lesson in war be taught by the Draxan Imperium. Let their history end where ours continues. As the orders flowed through the hypernet, mobilizing the most formidable war machine in the local galaxy, a single Altari listening post, hidden in the cometary halo of a dead star, captured the mobilization signatures. Ambassador Kale received the data stream with a heart turned to ice. His warnings had been fertilizer for their arrogance. He tried desperately to send a superluminal burst to Sol, a final scream into the void. They are coming. The message hit an invisible wall, a Draxan communications dampening field, already enveloping the approach vector to Earth. The warning died, unread. As Kale watched the 4th battle fleet, a glittering swarm of death, vanish into hyperspace, he could only whisper a futile prayer to cold stars. The Draxan were not sailing to a conquest. They were sailing, with all their proud, blind majesty, into a meticulously prepared laboratory, and humanity would be the dissecting scientists. End of Section 1. The die is cast. The Imperium, a force of pure, arrogant power, moves with the certainty of a landslide toward a world it does not understand. But Earth is not a passive rock awaiting impact. It is a hive of quiet, terrifying activity. When I say next, we will witness the first contact of blades, the moment the unstoppable force meets the immovable, calculating object. The battle of Sol is about to begin. The void between stars is not empty. It is a canvas of silent forces, of gravitational whispers and cosmic patience. Into this patient dark, the Draxan 4th battle fleet erupted from hyperspace not with a roar, but with the silent, chilling suddenness of a blade unsheathed against a throat. 300 vessels, their hulls the color of clotted blood and cooled magma, formed a crescent of annihilation at the edge of the Sol system. Admiral Rex stood on the command bridge of the Imperator's Wrath, a vessel whose prow was carved into the snarling visage of a legendary beast. He drank in the tactical display, a symphony of confident, glowing icons representing his might. The pale blue out of Earth was a distant, insignificant spark. Sensor sweep, Rex commanded, his voice echoing in the martial silence of the bridge. Minimal activity, Admiral, the sensor officer droned. Orbital traffic consistent with pre-industrial spaceflight. 37 no. 38 thermal signatures on intercept vectors. Appear to be civilian-grade vessels. Bulk freighters or processors, one passenger liner. No weapons signatures detected. Nos childi mischens. A low chuckle rippled through the bridge crew. Rex allowed himself a thin, sharp smile. It was exactly as intelligence had predicted. A sheepfold awaiting the wolves. Open a fleet-wide channel. This is Admiral Rex of the Draxan 4th Battle Fleet. By decree of Emperor Thrax, the Sol system is now a protectorate of the Draxan Imperium. All human vessels will power down drives and submit to boarding. Planetary leadership will surrender unconditionally. Resistance will be met with planetary sterilization. You have 10 of their minutes to comply. The response came not from a panicked government, but from one of the approaching civilian blips. The main viewer resolved to show a human male seated on a utilitarian bridge. His uniform was simple, his face weathered but calm, his eyes holding a peculiar, focused intensity. The nameplate read, Blake. Draxan Fleet, this is Captain Marcus Blake of the Earth System's patrol vessel Watchful. You are in violation of sovereign space. Your ultimatum is rejected. Power down your weapons, withdraw outside the heliopause, and we will permit your departure. You have 9 minutes and 30 seconds. The sheer, incomprehensible gall of the statement created a vacuum of sound on the Imperator's Wrath's bridge. Then, it filled with Draxan laughter, a harsh, barking sound of pure disbelief. Did he just give us a countdown? Rex asked, his amusement turning to a cold, prickling anger. From a cargo hauler? He leaned forward. Captain Blake, look at your sensor screen. Count the lights. That is not a negotiation. It is the last sight you will ever see. Weapons officer, target the Watchful. A single burst from the tertiary plasma battery. Let's melt their insolence into slag. Aye, Admiral. Firing. Space Tour. A lance of incandescent green plasma, capable of vaporizing a mountainside, streaked across the gulf. It struck the boxy hull of the human vessel dead amidships. The bridge crew watched, expecting a beautiful, fleeting flower of fire. The plasma washed over the hull and dissipated. It swirled and bled away like water over glass. The Watchful shuddered slightly, a haze of superheated vapor boiling off its surface, and then continued its advance. Utterly unharmed silence, absolute and profound, swallowed the Draxan laughter. Report! Rex barked, his scales tightening. Direct hit confirmed, Admiral. Energy absorption, unprecedented. Hull composition unknown. No structural compromise detected. It's as if they expected that exact weapon, with that exact yield, and coded their ship in a perfect counteragent. Before Rex could process this, the sensor officer's voice sharpened. The human vessels are accelerating. Attack pattern unrecognizable. It's not a formation. It's a swarm algorithm. On the tactical holo, the 38 human ships, each a clumsy, asymmetrical silhouette, began to move. They did not form a defensive line or a spearhead. They broke apart, each moving on a seemingly erratic, non-ballistic course, weaving and darting like sparks on the wind. Yet, there was a horrifying harmony to the chaos. No two vectors intersected. No ship presented a clean broadside for more than a second. All vessels open fire, Rex commanded, unease coiling in his gut. Full dispersal. Target everything. Erase them. The Draxan crescent erupted in light. A storm of plasma bolts, pulsed particle beams, and guided antimatter missiles filled the space between the fleets. A display of firepower that had cracked worlds. It was the galaxy's most dazzling light show of death. And the humans danced through it. They didn't evade. They preempted. Ships jinked microseconds before a plasma lance fired, as if reading the weapons officer's mind. They slid into the blind spots of missile targeting scanners. The Watchful, now at the forefront, took 2 more direct hits on its angled prow, the plasma shearing away harmlessly. Captain Blake's face remained on the secondary screen, his expression one of detached analysis, as if monitoring a complex fluid dynamics simulation. Their predictive modeling is off the scale, the science officer screamed, data streaming across his console. They're factoring our weapon recharge cycles, our tracking latency, even minor thruster adjustments. They've turned our own attack patterns into a navigational map. Then the humans returned fire. What emerged from their vessels were not beams of elegant energy, but crude, physical projectiles. From launch tubes that looked salvaged from ancient artillery, they fired slugs of dense metal. To the Draxan, it was the warfare equivalent of throwing rocks. The first tungsten slug, no larger than a human fist, struck the Draxan cruiser fire of conquest. The ship's powerful gravitic shield, designed to deflect and diffuse energetic attacks, flared a brilliant blue and did nothing. The shield was engineered for photons and plasma, not inert mass at relativistic velocities. The slug, traveling at a significant fraction of light speed, punched through the shield like it wasn't there, through the armored hull, through 6 decks, and out the other side, leaving a perfect, molten tunnel of devastation in its wake. The fire of conquest listed, atmosphere screaming into the void from the surgical wound. "Shields are ineffective," the tactical officer yelled. "They're using kinetics. Primitive, hyper-accelerated kinetics." "It's not primitive," the science officer countered, his voice shrill with terror. "It's brutally, perfectly efficient. They've identified the one flaw in our defensive paradigm. They're not fighting our technology. They're exploiting the gaps in our theory." The battle, planned as a swift execution, devolved into a nightmare. The Draxan fought the battle they had trained for centuries. A clash of energy weapons and shield harmonics. The humans fought a different battle entirely. They used their civilian-grade hulls, now revealed to be coated in ablative, energy-dissipating nanocomposites, as mobile shields. They used their seemingly random movements to herd Draxan vessels into kill zones where others, lying in wait behind asteroid shadows or planetary gravity wells, could fire their mass drivers with impunity. Admiral Rex watched in mounting horror as his elegant formation disintegrated. A human or hauler, its hold supposedly full of raw metals, detonated a shaped plasma charge at close range, scouring the sensors from a Draxan battleship. A converted fuel tanker released a cloud of ball bearings, turning a section of space into a shredder that eviscerated a squadron of fighters. "They've weaponized their industrial base," Rex roared. "Every ship, every tool, is a potential bomb." The culmination was both horrific and magnificent in its simplicity. A small, fast human courier ship, the Swift Courier, identified as the vessel carrying the initial surrender demand, suddenly broke from the swarm. Its engines glowed a dangerous, overloaded white. It didn't fire a weapon. It simply pointed its reinforced nose at the Imperator's wrath and accelerated on a final, suicidal vector. "Evasive action! All-point defense!" Rex screamed. The point defense lasers scored the hull, but the Swift Courier was too small, too fast, its trajectory too unwavering. It wasn't trying to ram. At the last possible second, just before impact, its entire mass converted into a contained, directional fusion explosion, a shaped charge the size of a small building. The blast wasn't omnidirectional. It was a lance of pure starfire that speared into the flagship's forward armor, bypassing shields designed for diffuse energy. The Imperator's wrath shuddered violently. Lights died. Screams echoed through ruptured decks. The mighty flagship was not destroyed, but it was crippled, bleeding air and data into the void on the bridge. Amidst the smoke and emergency lighting, the comms crackled. It was Captain Blake, his voice still preternaturally calm. "Admiral Rex, your flagship is disabled. 75 of your capital ships are destroyed or out of action. You have lost this engagement. Withdraw your forces. Now." Rex, clutching a console for support, his pride in tatters, could only stare at the tactical display. The numbers were undeniable. In less than 30 minutes, a quarter of his invincible fleet had been annihilated by scrap-heap ships and tactical genius that felt less like combat and more like a physics experiment where the Draxen were the control group. The order to retreat tasted like ash and blood. All remaining vessels, disengage. Fall back to Rally Point Sigma. Prepare for hyperspace jump. As the broken remnants of the 4th Battle Fleet fled, Blake's final transmission followed them into the whispering dark. "You were warned. Tell your Emperor the next lesson will be more expensive." On Earth, in a command bunker buried deep beneath a mountain range, the mood was not celebratory. It was focused, analytical. General Adams, the man with the tired eyes, watched the battle data stream across 100 screens. Officers murmured in quiet, technical jargon. Ablative coding performed at 98.7% efficiency against projected plasma yield. Swarm algorithm Delta 3 effective. Enemy pattern recognition lag estimated at 2.3 seconds. Kinetic penetrator success rate 94%. Shield bypass confirmed. Sacrificial vessel Swift Courier detonation successful. Target flagship mission killed. Adams nodded slowly. Phase 1 complete. Battlefield data acquisition successful. Now we have their measure. He turned to a bank of engineers. Begin fabrication of Mark II hulls. Integrate captured shield frequency data. I want their next volley to be not just absorbed, but harvested for our capacitors. And get me the psych warfare team. It's time to draft our invitation for round 2. The message was sent not through diplomatic channels but broadcast on Draxen military frequencies, a ghost in their own machines. It was a simple, clean data packet containing 3 things. The complete sensor log of the Battle of Seoul from the human perspective, highlighting every Draxen tactical error in glowing detail. Schematics for a theoretical improvement to the Draxen plasma lance that would increase its efficiency by 22%. With a polite note that Earth's engineers had already devised a countermeasure, and a single line of text. "You fight with the grace of history. We fight with the calculus of the future. Come back when you are ready to learn the difference." It was the ultimate psychological weapon. Not a taunt, but a tutorial. It demonstrated not just victory, but superior understanding. It turned their defeat from a misfortune into an academic failing. On the Draxen homeworld, the atmosphere in the Imperial Sanctum was one of cataclysmic fury. Emperor Thrax's rage was a physical force, cracking the stone floor beneath his feet. The sight of the limping Imperator's wrath, its proud face scarred and blackened, was an insult carved into the sky. 66 ships lost. To miners. The roar shook dust from the cavernous ceiling. "You let them humiliate the Imperium." Admiral Rex, kneeling, his scales dull with shame, protested. "My Emperor, they were not miners. They were mathematicians. They used our own doctrine against us. They fight a war of information, not firepower." "Enough!" Thrax silenced him with a blast of psychic fury that made Rex gasp. "Your excuses are the bile of the defeated. The Imperium does not lose. It learns. And what it learns, it destroys." He turned his blazing eyes to the assembled high command. "Total mobilization. The 1st, 2nd, and 3rd battle fleets are to merge with the remnants of the 4th. 800 capital ships. The entire might of the Draxen sword arm. We do not just attack. We erase. We will not bombard their cities from orbit. We will push their planet into its sun. Let their history burn with them." General Vex, who had watched the battle logs with a growing, cold dread, dared to speak. Sire, the human transmission, their analysis of our tactics was flawless. They are anticipating our every move. A larger fleet may only present a larger target for their calculus. Thrax loomed over him. You suggest we fear their arithmetic? We will drown their numbers in a tide of fire so vast their equations cannot process it. They have one star system. We have 50. They have a few hundred converted freighters. We have 8,000 years of warship production. This ends now. The orders went out. The Draxan Imperium, for the first time in its history, went to a war footing not of conquest, but of existential vengeance. It was a mobilization of pure, unfettered rage. As the greatest armada the galaxy had ever seen began to gather, a singular, focused hatred pulsed through the hypernet. Kill Earth and the quiet bunkers of Earth. General Adams received the confirmed reports of the total Draxan mobilization. He allowed himself a small, grim smile. Good, he said to his aides. Anger is predictable. It makes them linear. And linear problems, he finished, tapping the weathered copy of Sun Tzu on his desk, have elegant, devastating solutions. Activate Protocol Aesop. Let's tell them a fable they'll never forget. The trap, meticulously prepared in the month since the first battle, was now set. The Sol system was no longer a collection of planets. It was a geode, peaceful, beautiful crystal on the outside, and within, a cavity lined with razor-sharp, waiting edges. The Draxan were not sailing to war. They were flying at full speed into the heart of a machine built for a single purpose: to dismantle an empire. End of section 2. The first blow has been struck, and the galaxy has learned that human primitiveness is a lethal facade. But the true test awaits. The Draxan Imperium, humiliated and enraged, has committed its entire being to annihilation. 800 warships against a single, prepared system. In the final section, when I say next, we will witness not just a battle, but a dissection. We will see the terrifying culmination of 5,000 years of martial thought, as humanity teaches the ultimate lesson. That the most dangerous weapon is not a star-shattering bomb, but an idea whose time has come, the idea that the best way to win a war is to ensure your enemy never wants to fight another. The Draxan Imperium's vengeance did not travel. It unfolded. From 100 mustering points across 50 star systems, the gathered fleets converged, a migration of monolithic wrath. 800 capital ships and their attendant swarms blotted out the light of suns, their combined mass bending the fabric of local space. This was not an invasion force. It was a statement of cosmic finality, a celestial hammer forged from the alloy of rage and shame, aimed at the fragile glass of Earth. Aboard the resurrected Imperator's wrath, now bearing fresh scars like badges of fury, Admiral Rex nursed a cold, singular purpose: annihilation. There would be no demands, no offers of surrender. The order from Emperor Thrax was as simple as it was absolute. Reduce every human-held rock to molten slag. As the colossal armada re-entered real space at the edge of the Sol system, a profound silence greeted them. No human ships swarmed. No defiant transmissions crackled over the comms. The system seemed dormant, peaceful. Only the steady, gentle ping of civilian navigation buoys and the distant, sleepy orbits of freighters moving between Mars and the asteroid belt. Scan everything, Rex ordered, his voice a gravelly rasp. Every cubic kilometer. I want their hidden fleets, their buried platforms, their secrets. They will not surprise us again. The Draxan sensor webs, the most advanced in the galaxy, pulsed out, bathing the inner system in waves of penetrating energy. They mapped the planets, the asteroids, the Lagrange points. The data scrolled across screens. Abandoned mining outposts on Ceres, quiet research domes on Luna, the sprawling, seemingly unprotected cities of Earth glittering like fool's gold. Admiral, the chief sensor officer reported, confusion tinging his voice. We detect the 200 human warships our scouts reported. They are holding position in high orbit around Earth, Mars, and Europa. Their energy signatures are minimal, almost idle, and we are detecting massive, distributed power sources across the system. But they're not on the ships. They're in the asteroids, in the planetary rings, in the orbital paths themselves. Rex studied the holographic tactical map. It showed the human fleet, a modest cluster of defensive icons. But surrounding them, layered through the entire volume of space like a three-dimensional minefield, were thousands of smaller, dormant signatures. Human ingenuity had not built a larger fleet. It had weaponized the very architecture of their home. They've turned their system into a fortress, General Vex observed from the bridge, his earlier dread hardening into cold respect. Every rock is a potential gun. Every shadow hides a blade. A fortress can be besieged, Rex snarled. And then it can be stormed. All fleets, advance. Formation Keth's Anvil. Heavy shields forward. Bombardment groups, prepare to target Earth's population centers on my mark. Let them watch their home die before we sweep their pathetic fleet aside. The Draxan Armada began its relentless advance, a wall of metal and focused malice pushing inward from the system's edge. They moved with disciplined, terrifying slowness, daring the humans to make the first move. The humans obliged. It began not with a salvo, but with a light show. Across the asteroid belt, thousands of seemingly inert rocks sprouted metallic petals. Not weapon ports, mirrors. Vast, polished mylar sheets, precisely angled, caught the light of the distant sun. For a moment, the Draxan were dazzled, their optical sensors overwhelmed by a billion points of reflected light. It was a distraction, primitive yet effective. Beneath the glare, the real weapons awoke. From within the hollowed-out heart of asteroid Vesta, a magnetic railgun of impossible scale emerged. Fired once. The projectile was not a tungsten slug, but a canister. It streaked past the Draxan vanguard, not aiming to hit, but to burst. It detonated in the midst of the fleet, releasing not explosives, but a cloud of ultrafine, conductive carbon filament, a weapon humanity called chaff in a more primitive age, now scaled to celestial warfare. The microscopic threads short-circuited sensor arrays, fouled thruster vents, and drifted into weapon barrels. Chaos of the subtle, insidious kind bloomed in the Draxan ranks. Then the human fleet moved, but not to engage. They broke orbit and scattered, not randomly as before, but with a purpose that became horrifyingly clear. They retreated through the pre-mined space of their own system, leading the Draxan Armada on a chase through a labyrinth of death. The Battle of Sol's second act was not a clash of titans. It was a symphony of traps, each movement composed centuries in advance by minds who saw the vacuum not as an empty battlefield, but as a complex terrain to be shaped. Trap 1. The Martian Graveyard. Draxan landing forces, seeking to establish a beachhead, descended upon the red planet's empty, terraformed cities. The moment their troop carriers touched the rust-colored soil, the cities reacted. Self-destruct charges, not placed to destroy buildings, but to collapse subterranean aquifers, turned landing zones into instant quagmires of liquid mud and permafrost. Automated defense turrets, hidden in plain sight as communication towers and weather vanes, rose and fired. The Draxan legions, expecting a ground war, found themselves drowning in a planet's automated immune response. Trap 2. The Jovian Death Trap. A Draxan battle group, pursuing human ships near Jupiter, ventured too close to the gas giant's intense radiation belts. Human vessels, shielded with surprisingly effective lead ceramic composites, ducked into the maelstrom. The Draxan ships, with shields optimized for energy weapons, found their electronics fried and crews cooked alive by the amplified radiation, which human freighters had subtly reflected and focused using hidden orbital mirrors. Trap 3. The Kuiper Ambush. Seeking to flank the system, a fast-moving Draxan detachment was lured into the diffuse debris field of the Kuiper Belt. Their waiting human science probes detonated, not with force, but with a spray of fast-setting, hyper-adhesive polymer foam. The substance hardened in the vacuum, cementing ship engines, sealing weapon ports, turning sleek warships into inert, frozen tombs adrift in the dark. Admiral Rex watched his grand armada being systematically disassembled. Ships weren't being destroyed in glorious fireballs. They were being disabled, trapped, humiliated. The humans fought with the ruthless efficiency of exterminators, not warriors. They targeted logistics ships first, then command vessels, then engines. They used the environment as a force multiplier, herding Draxan formations into the path of a comet's tail, using a moon's gravity to slingshot mines into their flanks. "They are not fighting a war," Rex screamed, pounding the command console as another battleship, the pride of YX Toll, went dark, its power core mysteriously neutralized by a focused electromagnetic pulse from a seemingly derelict satellite. "They are conducting a system audit, and we are the faulty components." The final, devastating blow was psychological. As the Draxan fleet, battered and bewildered, tried to regroup, every comm channel, every internal screen, every heads-up display flickered. A human face appeared, General Adams. He looked tired, sorrowful, but resolved. "Admiral Rex, Emperor Thrax, you have now lost 412 capital ships. Your formation is broken. Your supply lines are cut. You are surrounded, not by our fleet, but by your own failures of imagination. You possess the power to glass planets. We possess the knowledge to turn your own power against you. You have attacked our home. We will now visit yours. Not for conquest, for a conversation." The screen split. It showed live feeds from the Draxan homeworld, Draxos Prime. The images were impossible. They showed the gleaming spires of the Imperial capital from street level. Human figures in light combat armor moved in quiet, disciplined teams through the city's central plaza. Not a shot was fired. Draxan civilians watched in stunned silence. The feeds showed the Imperial spaceport, its defenses offline, its doors open. They showed the gates of the Imperial sanctum itself, undamaged but guarded by human soldiers. How? Thrax's roar of pure, undiluted fury and terror echoed from the surface, transmitted to Rex's bridge. How are they here? The answer was the ultimate demonstration of human tactical genius. While the Draxan attention was utterly fixated on the grand, apocalyptic battle at Sol, a single stealth-modified human vessel, powered by a reverse-engineered and improved Draxan hyperdrive, had slipped away months prior. It did not carry an army. It carried schematics, AI infiltration viruses, and a small team of Special Forces operatives versed in linguistics, xenopsychology, and systems hacking. While the Imperium's eyes were turned outward, these operatives had walked in through the back door of their digital and physical infrastructure, using captured Draxan codes and uniforms, moving like ghosts through a society so arrogantly secure it had forgotten to lock its most vital doors. The Draxan Imperium had not been defeated in battle. It had been surgically bypassed. Their mighty fleet was a sword stuck in a distant block of wood, while a dagger was already at the Emperor's throat. The throne room of the Imperial sanctum was a tomb of dead pride. Emperor Thrax stood before his obsidian throne, not as a ruler but as a specimen. Around him, a dozen human soldiers maintained a quiet, vigilant perimeter. They had not looted, not desecrated. They had simply arrived. General Adams stood before him, having walked through the hallowed halls as a tourist might walk through a museum. "You have not won," Thrax spat, though the defiance was hollow, the spirit broken. "You have tricked. You have cheated the honorable ways of war." "There is no honor in war," Adams replied, his voice quiet but filling the vast space. "There is only survival and consequence. You chose to bring war to a species that has spent 5,000 years cataloging its consequences. We did not cheat. We calculated. While you planned to break our worlds, we studied how to hold yours without breaking a single window." He gestured to the silent city beyond the great windows. "We could have unleashed plague in your atmosphere. We could have triggered your core taps to melt your planet from within. We could have broadcast a psychic scream on your neural frequency that would have driven your entire species mad. The schematics for all those weapons are in our historical archives. We chose none of them. Then what do you want? Thrax whispered, the scale of his miscalculation crushing him. Slaves? Tribute? Our empire. We want you to stop, Adam said. We want you to look at what you have built. He activated a small projector. It showed the 50 star systems of the Draxan Imperium, each flagged with data. Slave populations here. Resource exhaustion here. Cultural genocide here. You are not builders. You are locusts. You consume, you move on. Your empire is a cancer, and it is dying from its own hunger. He stepped closer, his eyes holding not hatred, but a profound, weary pity. We are offering you a choice no one you conquered ever received. The choice to change. Withdraw your fleets from all occupied systems. Dismantle your slave pens. Share your technology freely with those you have oppressed. Submit to conclave oversight. Transform your warrior culture into one of stewardship. And if we refuse? Thrax asked, though he knew his bargaining chips were ash. Then we leave, Adam said simply. The answer was so unexpected Thrax actually staggered. We will depart your homeworld. Recall our fleet from the wreckage around Sol and go home. We will seal our borders. And we will watch. We will watch as the species you have enslaved, once they learn the Draxan shield of invincibility is broken, rise up. We will watch as your fractured, resource-starved empire collapses under the weight of 1,000 rebellions. You will destroy yourselves, and we will not lift a finger. Because that is the other lesson of our history. Empires that cannot adapt are just ruins waiting for a date. He placed a data crystal on the steps of the throne. The terms, the transition plans, the educational programs for your youth, to teach them engineering instead of eradication. The medical data to cure the genetic aggression triggers your ancestors baked into your DNA. The choice, Emperor, is not between victory and defeat. It is between evolution and extinction. You have 24 hours. As Adams and his men filed out, leaving the throne room to the stunned Emperor and his silent guards, the truth settled upon Draxos Prime like a physical law. Humanity had not come as conquerors. They had come as doctors, and they had diagnosed a terminal illness called conquest. The prescription was painful, humiliating reform. The alternative was a slow, certain death the galaxy would applaud. Weeks later, in the restored Great Hall of the Galactic Conclave, a different silence reigned, one of awe, not dread. Ambassador Kale stood beside General Adams, who wore a simple civilian suit. On the main display, the signing of the Draxan Demilitarization and Reformation Accords was being broadcast. Emperor Thrax, looking diminished but sober, was signing away his empire, not to humanity, but to a future. The galaxy wonders, Kale said to Adams, his voice hushed. They saw your power. They expected a new imperium with Earth at its head. They expected tribute, fear. Instead, you send teachers, engineers, doctors. You are spending your resources to rebuild what the Draxan broke. Why? Adams gazed at the starfield beyond the viewport. Ambassador, on Earth, there is an ancient story. A scorpion asks a frog to carry it across a river. The frog is afraid of being stung. The scorpion argues, if I sting you, we will both die. Halfway across, the scorpion stings the frog. As they sink, the frog asks, why? The scorpion replies, it is my nature. He turned to Kale. For 5,000 years, we believed war was our nature. Our scorpion's sting. It defined us. Then, we created weapons so powerful that using them meant our own certain end. We stood on the brink of that river, sting poised, and we had a moment of horrific clarity. We could be the scorpion, or we could choose, despite all our history, all our programming, to be something else. To be the creature that chooses not to sting. He gestured to the screen where Draxan and former slave species delegates were shaking hands. We did not defeat the Draxan to rule them. We defeated them to prove to the galaxy and to ourselves that the cycle can be broken. That strength is not for taking, but for protecting. That the ultimate victory is not in making your enemy kneel, but in teaching them how to stand tall beside you in peace. The conclave erupted, not in cheers, but in a wave of profound, resonant silence, followed by a sound never before heard in that hall. The synchronized, respectful applause of 47 species. Humanity had not just won a war. They had introduced a new concept to galactic politics. Victory through mercy. Strength through restraint. On the bridge of the Watchful, now docked at a conclave station for repairs, Captain Blake watched the broadcast. A young communications officer, her eyes wide, asked him, "Sir, is it really over? Did we win?" Blake looked at the scarred but functional console, at the image of atoms on the screen, at the star-dusted piece outside. "We didn't win a war, Ensign," he said softly. "We ended one. And in doing so, we finally started to win the battle against our own nature. That's the victory that matters. That's the one that lasts." The galaxy had learned why you never attack humans. Not because they are the strongest, but because they are the most resilient. Not because they are the fiercest warriors, but because they are the wisest survivors. And having mastered the art of war to its terrifying apex, they had made the only logical, the only sane, the only truly civilized choice, to become its most devoted, vigilant peacekeepers. The age of empires was over. The age of the Guardians had begun.